Hi everyone, welcome back to Lifting the Lamp. Today's video is all about the keeping and use of the Magickal Diary. Keeping a Magickal Diary will greatly enhance your magical practice. You'll take experiences and results that would have evaporated into thin air given enough time, and you will be able to really consolidate those gains, make them permanent and really lock them in, and be able to build upon those past successes in your future successes. So without any further delay, here is how to use a Magickal Diary. I've used a Magickal Diary from day one of my magical practice, and it has greatly contributed to my success. I still have my Magickal Diary from 2007, my very first one. I've got a whole bookshelf full of them. So by way of an example, here is one of my previous Magickal Diaries. You can see that there's tabs along the top for me to bookmark important points in my spiritual journey. I like these sort of antique looking designs. Here's another one. This has got a sort of gold leaf running through it here. But this is what I've used to record my journey. So if I pick this one up and I open it to a page, let's see what's in here. You've got a bunch of solar adorations that I've recorded that I engaged in, a practice that I engaged in. It looks like it was a Raja Yoga practice. I've put details about the result in there. I've made notes about things that I was thinking about, little insights that I've had. So that sort of thing is what goes into your Magickal Diary. Any practice that you do as a regular practice, anytime you do that, you record the circumstances, the conditions of that practice, and the result of the practice in your Magickal Diary. You put the time that it happened, you put the date that everything happened, and you list everything that has occurred. If you have some kind of a spiritual experience, you put that in. If you're engaging in a magical working, you record the time and the date that you did that, and the outcome that you wanted to see, the specific setup of the ritual that you're engaged in. All of this goes into the Magickal Diary. And so with the Magickal Diary, you're really trying to create a complete record, a complete activity log of everything that you're doing in your magical or spiritual practice, and also leaving space in there for you to write down what your thoughts and reflections are at any given time. I would say that there are really three primary reasons why you'd want to keep a Magickal Diary. The first is remembering. The second is reflecting. The third is recording results. So let me start with remembering. The Magickal Diary helps us to remember. You know, we do a lot of things in our lives, but we're also very forgetful. We very easily forget ourselves. In a moment of passion, we might act in a way that we wouldn't normally act, and we say, in that moment, I just forgot who I was. In the longer term, we forget key bits of information about our lives, which we stored in our memory before. Can you tell me what you ate 3 weeks ago for breakfast? Probably not. Our mind discards most of the information that we record in our short-term memory, and leaves space for only the most important things in our lives that we remember. Of course, sometimes things happen to us, particularly in the spiritual realm, where they're a bit strange and perhaps we don't immediately see the importance of that thing. So that's what makes it so imperative to have a way of recording every magical experience, every spiritual experience, on the off chance that it means something that we ought to remember, and that will allow us to go back later on and go back to that experience. This also becomes important when recording patterns of synchronicity, which might be pointing you in a certain direction on your spiritual journey. The first time that it happens, you won't know that it's going to be a pattern, because of course it's only happened once. But as time goes on, you will notice certain symbols, certain types of events keep repeating in your life, and that's telling you something. And so it's important to document every spiritual experience. You won't know which ones are important and which ones are not as important until later down the track. But you just must record them regardless at the time that they happened. And it's just good to record everything in general because, we've got limited storage space in our minds. The same way that we have limited storage space on our phones. Once we've used up all of the data or all the storage, we need to start backing things up somewhere else. Think of the Magickal Diary as your backup memory, because you're not going to remember all of the significant experiences in fine detail that you've been through on your magical journey, particularly if you're years into it. And this is a great thing. It's great to record everything because you are making sure that there are no gaps in your story. When you're writing your Magickal Diary, you are writing your story as a magician, as a spiritual practitioner. You are maintaining your hall of records. So the other reason why keeping a Magickal Diary is so important is for the sake of reflecting. This modern life that we live in, it's so frantic. There's no time to just pause and think about things and reflect on things. We're always having to rush from one thing to the next haphazardly because if we stop for a moment, it seems like everything will fall apart. And if we wait for our job or the society in which we live to afford us time to breathe and time to set aside for ourselves, to think about what we really want rather than what external forces want for us, then we will never have that. We need to take that time. We need to set that time aside and cultivate the discipline of having reflective time. And the practice of keeping a journal of any kind, including a Magickal Diary, is a way of enforcing that reflective time. The practice of keeping any sort of journal is reflective in and of itself. You're going over and reviewing the events that have occurred earlier in your life. And as you write them down again, maybe you will get a deeper insight into certain events than when they simply happen to you. But self-reflection in its own right is a very important part of the spiritual path. We need to digest things that have happened to us, things that are floating around in our psychology just as much as we need to digest food. And if we fail to do so, it can cause health problems, the same way as with physical digestion. And by going over our magical record, going over the record of spiritual impressions that we've had, all that sort of thing, we can quickly come to realize whether we're on the right track. If something's not working for us, not serving us anymore, that we should discard it. If there's certain things in our life that disrupt our ability to find that inner peace, becoming aware of that, patterns that repeat that are not helpful to us, karma that repeats, becoming aware of that. The reflective aspect of keeping a journal will allow you to do all of those things. And then the final aspect of keeping a Magickal Diary, which makes it so important, is the recording of the result. Now, this is the more scientific aspect of the practice of keeping a Magickal Diary. By doing what I described earlier, writing down the date, the time, the conditions of a particular magical working or spiritual practice such as a meditation, you're effectively implementing the scientific method. You're treating each practice like the conducting of an experiment, and you're taking account of all of the variables, and then you're observing the result of the practice and you're recording the result in an objective, honest fashion. And so this allows you to transform your magical practice or your spiritual journey in general into a true, precise science. And you will be able to identify long-term trends. If there's a regular daily practice that you're engaging in, such as a meditation practice, you'll be able to identify how quickly you're progressing and how well you're progressing in that practice. If something you've done hasn't worked, you'll be able to better identify that because you'll be able you'll be able to go back and look at the conditions that you did that exercise under. You'll be able to look at what you intended to happen, and with hindsight, being able to revisit that weeks, even months later, you'll be able to see just how well that magical working, for example, has worked, or just how well that regimen of doing a particular practice every day has worked. And as you explore the world of magic, the world of spirituality, you will try lots of different types of practice. Some of those will go nowhere. Some of them will be a great success. Being able to identify what kind of practice is what in terms of how suitable it is to you is something that the Magickal Diary will help you to do. You'll be able to see by looking over and using hindsight, you'll be able to see which things you pursued were a bit of a flop. You'll be able to see which things were a huge success, which really resonated with you. And then once you know what works best for you, you can start to hone your practice and do only that, and discard all of the things that you were maybe wasting your time on before. So that's my video on the Magickal Diary. I've explained a little bit about the way you record that, the way you record information in it, and once you have recorded that information, and once you've committed to regularly recording in the diary, the many and varied uses of the Magickal Diary and the way that really enriches your spiritual journey. So I hope you found that useful. Thanks again for listening. If you have something to add on this topic, leave your comments down below as per usual. Please hit that subscribe button to support my work. Thanks again. See you next time.